Hello, I'm Professor Jeff Gully, and in this course, Ethics in the Legal Environment, one of the important issues that we discuss is the unit on worker safety in Unit 5. So this short video will explore the historic Triangle Shirtwaist Factory Fire and its impact on worker safety. As you are reading about in this unit as well, and perhaps you're already aware, the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory Fire occurred in March of 1911 in New York City. This photo shows the damages, how the fire went through the factory itself. It killed 146 people. Those employees were mostly immigrant girls and women who worked at the factory. So, what was the life of those employees who worked at the shirtwaist factory? Many of them were young women, as young as 15. They worked 7 days a week. 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. was the typical schedule. Not a lot of laws at that time to protect workers or even to give them a break. So they had a regular half-hour lunch break each day. And if it was the busy season, where product production was even more important, the work was basically nonstop. What were their earnings? About $6 per week. And even in some cases, the employers required them to use their own needles, thread, irons, and even their own sewing machines. What was life really like there where they were working? Well, there at the factory, women had to leave the building in order to use the bathroom. That's right, a factory with no bathrooms available for their employees. Then the management started locking the steel exit doors to prevent the work from being interrupted, and only the foreman had the key. The fire escapes related determined to be inadequate. The shirtwaist itself was a blouse and one of the country's first fashion statements, if you will. It crossed class lines. The ready-made clothing industry made it affordable even for working women. Well, you can imagine why, right? With the women working 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. every single day for $6 a week. So cheap labor, cheap shirtwaist, right? So there's a photo of the shirtwaist. So you look at that. In 1911, someone could purchase that for $1. Today, using the consumer price index inflationary measure, it would be about $35 for that same shirt, waist, or blouse, if you will. The actual cost could be much lower. There's certain discount sites out there, of course, that a lot of American consumers use today. So what about accountability? Well, yes, it got a lot of publicity at the time. The company had two owners, Max Blanc and Isaac Harris. They actually survived the tragic fire by fleeing to the building's rooftop when the fire actually started, unlike most of the employees who were locked inside and could not escape. There was a significant public outcry in the community as well. The two owners were later indicted on charges of first and second degree manslaughter. They went to trial later that year in December of 1911, where the jury ended up acquitting the two men of the criminal charges that they faced. A couple of years later, they were both found liable of wrongful death in a subsequent civil trial. The verdict there, the plaintiffs were awarded compensation in the amount of $75 per deceased victim. That's about $2,443 per victim in 2026 dollars. What about Blanc and Harris? Well, the insurance company ended up paying them almost $65,000 more than the reported losses, or about $445 per casualty, which is about $14,500 per casualty in today's dollars. I read a really interesting article about This tragic fire, where PBS explored it even more in some of their American experience history films and articles. So I included a link there if you want to check that out. Well, the factory fires certainly did have an impact on our laws. In fact, a few months after the fire happened in New York City, things started happening. The person pictured there, Frances Perkins, actually was felt quite helpless. She later told her friends and the press as she watched the factory burn. She said that that tragedy inspired her future work in advocating for workers' rights. Frances Perkins became the Secretary of Labor under President Franklin D. Roosevelt and the first woman ever to serve as a member of a presidential cabinet, and that was from 1933 to 1945. So, after the fire, within 3 months, under the pressure from Frances Perkins and many other activists, New York's governor signed a law creating a brand new factory investigating commission. It had unprecedented powers seen in the state and any place around the country. So, with her work and advocacy and tireless efforts, she helped get 8 separate laws passed in New York covering fire safety, covering factory inspection, sanitation, employment rules for those factory workers, which were mostly women and children. The following year, and continued work, continued advocacy, and a push for 25 more laws that ended up rewriting New York State's entire labor laws and even creating a state Department of Labor to enforce the laws. So this early advocacy work impacted the laws in the state of New York and served as sort of a foundation for later on when Congress enacted the Occupational Safety and Health Act of 1970, creating the agency OSHA, where the federal government now began to address the need to prevent or minimize workplace accidents and the health hazards to employees on a national scale. And for the first time, the government created at a federal level a general duty on the part of every covered employer to maintain a work environment, language from the statute, free from recognized hazards causing or likely to cause death or serious physical harm to employees. So, unfortunately, sometimes in our society today, it takes tragedy to spur our elected officials into action. And unfortunately, this tragic Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire was one of those examples. So thank you for watching this short video today, and I hope you took away some new knowledge about worker safety and the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire. Thank you.